Hello and welcome back to the channel today. My name is Andy, and today, with it being the off season, the summer break from F1, we don't have a race review obviously because there's still 2 weeks until Belgium. So in my wisdom, I'm going to try and unravel the current F1 drivers market. I had planned on doing like a mid-season review, sort of grading the drivers. I'll do that as I'm going along as well, but with the bombshell the other week that Daniel Ricciardo is leaving Red Bull for the Renault team, it has completely thrown a nuclear bomb into the current F1 driver market. And I'm going to go through what I think and what my predictions are for the 2019 grid, because it's going to be interesting to see just how many of them come true. So I'm going to give that a go today and see what I can come up with. Obviously, leave comment as well of what you think. Do you agree with me? Do you disagree with me? Do you think that I've missed something? Let me know below. And if you do like listening to my ramblings, shall we say, then do leave a like as well. But I'm going to get straight into it. Now, first of all, I'm not going to dwell on Mercedes very much. We already knew from the German Grand Prix that Lewis Hamilton signed until 2020. Valtteri Bottas is on a 1-year deal with an option for a second, so unless something drastic changes, I don't see that changing at Mercedes for at least the next 2 years before 2021. I do expect both Hamilton and Bottas to still be there unless something drastic changes. So the first bit we have some actual discussion on is Ferrari. Now, we already know Sebastian Vettel signed up until the end of 2020 as well. By the way, 2021 driver market's going to be crazy. But who's going to be alongside him next season? Now, Kimi Raikkonen's going to be 39 before the season's finished. He's the elder statesman of the sport, followed by, I think it's Fernando Alonso, who's next. But yet, despite that, he's been very consistent, especially in this middle part of the first half of the season. These last 5 races, he's been second or third. He's been on the podium 5 races running. And before that run, I would have said Charles Leclerc would go into that seat. To be honest with you, the Monaco driver at Sauber, a Ferrari young driver, I thought that they would have put him in. But the more I then thought about it, and then the more Kimi kept performing, the more I'm lined up to say that they'll actually retain Raikkonen for at least one more season. His consistency's there. As much as Kimi won't admit it, the team won't admit it, he's a good number 2 for Seb. He is obviously quick. He's not quite got the pace of Sebastian. And I do think, with history, Sebastian's probably had a bit of a political nudge to make sure that they don't go with Leclerc. He won't want some young up-and-coming whippersnapper, so to speak, snapping at his heels in the same machinery, which is probably another reason why when he had the issues with Webber, or then Ricciardo came in, so he left, Hamilton with Alonso. It's repeated itself over time, so I do think Ferrari will stick with the status quo. It's probably their best chance as well, like fighting for the championship. It's concentrating on Sebastian. It's almost like Schumacher Mark II, where the team is revolving around their German number 1. But don't expect that to stay like that for ages. I do expect to see Leclerc in that seat within the next 2 seasons. I really, really do. Moving on to Red Bull, and obviously the announcement from Ricciardo was what caused this friggin' torpedo right through the driver market. It was one of the main parts, and I'd been saying for weeks, if you listen to my race reviews, I expected Ricciardo to stay. He signed probably a 2-year deal with Red Bull, which would have taken him up to the same time as Lewis, as Sebastian, and as Max as well, and been signed up to the end of 2020. Now, he is signed up to the end of 2020 season now, but it is with the Renault team, completely caught off the cusp with everybody. Nobody expected him to go to the French manufacturer team. Many people are saying, was he feeling he's not getting the same treatment as Max? Did he see Max as being the future, as being the best chance of Red Bull fighting for the championship in the future? I don't know. Christian Horner said in the Beyond the Grid F1 podcast this week that they always got fair treatment, but that's his fault of was why Daniel left the team. Now, Renault have always been good at getting there or thereabout, no matter what time they've joined the sport, so that's probably another reason, but it is a huge risk from the Aussie. But who will replace him in that seat? It's a coveted seat, obviously. I can imagine Horner's phone is ringing off the hook with numerous drivers, but the likelihood is, as is history repeating itself, Red Bull will stick with what they know, and that is they'll stick with their Red Bull young driver talent. Now, granted, they don't have as deep a pool of talent now as they used to do, but their choices for me are down to Carlos Sainz and Pierre Gasly. Now, obviously, Sainz has been replaced at Renault by Ricciardo, so you could see the idea of a straight seat swap. Sainz is on loan at Renault from Red Bull, having joined from Toro Rosso, and I believe the deal was, that within the loan agreement he would only be recalled if it was to Red Bull, if it was a Red Bull seat. If not, then he was a free agent. So he's a good driver, Carlos, he's got good experience, but there's one thing that the more I read stuff was making me think otherwise, and that is when at Toro Rosso, Carlos and Max did not have the greatest relationships, and they will not want that in the team. They'll want it as harmonious as possible. They won't want to go back to having a fractious team. Will they have, they've been having issues probably at the moment with Ricciardo and Max, Sebastian and Mark Webber and previous. I think the person in prime position for a seat, and I think the man they'll give it to, is Pierre Gasly, the current driver at Toro Rosso. The reason I think the Frenchman will be there, he's been putting in some great performances. He's took advantage of his situations when needed, so fourth in Bahrain, a good run at Monaco for a good set of points, and the Hungarian Grand Prix recently where he finished in sixth and on the lead lap from the front runners as well. So I think that's going to help him. The other thing I think that'll help is he's going to have a full year of use with the Honda engine, and of course Red Bull are going to be powered by Honda from next season as well. So I think they will give it to Gasly. There had been mention of Fernando Alonso, but even before the podcast where Horner says I don't expect that to be, because he usually causes quite a lot of hassle wherever he goes. Look at Ferrari and McLaren with the politics. I wouldn't have expected that, because there's a big massive elephant in the room, and it is once again Honda. Let's not remember Fernando was not too kind of his words about that Japanese power unit. So I expect it to be Max Verstappen and Pierre Gasly in the Red Bull seat next season. Touching on Renault, obviously Ricciardo's joined them. He's been kept He's been put alongside Nico Hulkenberg. I nearly said Rosberg there. Can you imagine that? Nico Hulkenberg staying alongside Ricciardo. The Aussie will be looking to do similar to what Hamilton did. He joined Mercedes when they were fifth, but he had close links to Mercedes beforehand as well. Ricciardo's had links to Renault because of Red Bull with the engine supply, but this is a different kettle of fish. It's the same regulations for another 2 seasons. Renault have always got there or thereabout. We just need to look back to when they were in the turbo era. They got the car up and competitive, but unfortunately everyone else got ahead of them. During their engine supplying days with Williams and Benetton, they were champions. They took on their own team, got double championship with Alonso. So I can see the reasoning behind Ricciardo's move, but it is a huge risk for a top line driver like him to be moving to what is the midfield team right now. I hope it pays off, but it is a big risk, and it'll be interesting to see what goes on. Moving on though to the Haas team. So Haas have obviously been seen as Ferrari's B team almost. There's a number of parts on the Haas car which are the same as the Ferrari due to the regulations allowing part shares now and everything like that. Kevin Magnussen, I think, is going to be kept on, no problems at all. The Dane has been good, he's been consistent, a little bit feisty, as the team principal Gunther Steiner said. He seems to have a season ticket to go and see the stewards, but he has been quick and he's been the one delivering the points, so I would be very surprised to see him go anywhere. The second seat, not so much. Now, Haas have said there's 4 races before they need to start thinking of their 2019 driver lineup. That could be a saving grace for Romain Grosjean. His season has been poor, he's made some mistakes, he's had some terrible luck as well. Mistakes, I think, off Spain when he got spun, he just planted the throttle, he crashed under a safety car in Baku, but he's been quick. When that car runs, that car is probably the second best car on the grid. I think they will keep on Grosjean, but it'll depend on these next 4 races. He's got experience, they maybe won't want to change that. If they do change that, then it's a choice between either Leclerc again, moving him up the grid to another Ferrari supported team like what Sauber is, or Antonio Giovinazzi, who is also another Ferrari young driver, has done free practice this season for both Haas and Sauber. So if it wasn't to be Romain Grosjean, I would expect one of those two to be in the team instead, but I do think they will maintain Grosjean unless his next 4 races are an absolute stinkers. Moving on to Force India. Now, this one keeps giving me headaches. When I originally wrote out all my notes for this, the team had gone into administration. They've now been bought out of administration, brought out by a consortium led by Lawrence Stroll, who is of course Lance Stroll's dad. He obviously drives for Williams at the moment. But it means the team is out of administration, back into solvency, and can continue running, saving over 400 jobs, which is phenomenal for everybody involved at the Silverstone team. I'm really glad that is the case. The issue then comes down to who's going to be driving, and there's a few big issues to look at here, a few points to consider. So let's start with Sergio Perez, one of the current drivers. The Mexican is at the team. He was asked to bring on the administration to avoid liquidation from another creditor, and he was owed money himself too. But he also brings a rumoured 12 million in personal sponsorship to the team, which is very, very important to Force India team. And that is going to be a big sway point. But now with this consortium, can they get away without that? That is a tricky one to know. When we look at the other driver, Esteban Ocon, the Frenchman, he's been doing really well, very consistent. I would actually say he's been better than Perez this season, to be honest with you. And he's also got good links to the engine supplier Mercedes, because he has a Mercedes Junior as well. So it makes for a very interesting part. Now, before it came out of administration when I wrote this, I expected it to be Perez and Ocon. I thought the money would be needed enough to keep him, and Ocon having the link to Mercedes, they'd want to keep him as far up the grid as possible. But now that this consortium's bought it out with Stroll's dad leading it, I've now got to say I think that we're going to see Lance moved up to Force India. Williams are struggling. His dad's not going to want to keep putting money into Williams as well as Force India. I very much doubt that. So I now need to think that Lance Stroll will be put into the team, and I can't decide whether it'll be Perez or Ocon who stays. I think, though, the most likely scenario would be Ocon because of his links to Mercedes. Because they've now got this consortium that have been brought back to solvency, as I say, maybe they don't need the sponsorship money as much as they used to do from Perez. So maybe they can look at the bigger picture, look at, Ocon's younger as well. No offence, Perez, he's still young. He's not as old as some of the grid, but he has been around for a good few seasons now. So maybe they'll look in that way and look to pair up Stroll with Ocon, and I do think now that the out of administration, that is going to be the case. I really, really do. Where Perez will go, well, we'll come on to that shortly in a wee minute as well. But originally I had also considered possibility of George Russell, who's current Formula 2 championship contender, and also another Mercedes young driver. But again, now with this change, I don't think that will happen, and I'll come on to Russell later on in our talk. So I think Force India is going to be Lance Stroll and Esteban Ocon for next season. We move on to McLaren. Now, I'm getting this out today as well because anyone who's on Twitter might have seen Fernando Alonso put up a countdown gif along with the date 14/8 So he's obviously making his announcement of where he is staying or going to on Tuesday, this Tuesday coming, from me putting this out. So I wanted to get this out before he blew another torpedo in the side of everything as well. Now, I really do think Fernando will stay on for at least one more season, maybe two. IndyCar, I'd love to see Alonso in IndyCar full time. I think that would be brilliant to see. But I think it'll be McLaren. I don't see him going to any other team on the grid. He's not going to go backwards in the grid, so all the other teams around him are not going to happen. Red Bull's going to be a no-go, as we spoke earlier on. It's a very unlikely with Honda. So I think he'll be staying there at McLaren. The big issue is who's going alongside him. So we've got three choices here for this. Stoffel Van Dorn's the current second driver, and he has struggled this season, which has been a real shame. I do like Stoffel. I think he's a good driver. But he's been beaten every qualifying session by Fernando, and although Alonso's got the experience, Stoffel is supposed to have the same machinery, and yet he struggled. So I do think that might count against him. Another choice is obviously going back to Carlos Sainz. If he's not called up to Red Bull, which I don't think will happen, I think, as I say earlier, it'll go to Gasly, that makes the Spaniard a free agent. There's been talk that McLaren have been talking to many drivers, they even spoke to Ricciardo, but I think they're going to take on Sainz, Spanish Armada, alongside Fernando at the McLaren team, and that's obviously going to take Stoffel off the grid as well. There was another possibility of Lando Norris, another F2 championship contender alongside George Russell, who is a McLaren young driver being promoted, but I don't think they'll be looking to do that at this point in time. Zach Brown, McLaren CEO, has even said, we can bring up youth if the car's good, but the car's not there, so we need experience to be able to exploit every part of it. So I don't see Lando being in that seat now, but he will be soon. So I expect it to be two Spaniards in the one team. We'll get a Spanish flavour at McLaren next year with Alonso and Sainz taking over those two seats. Next up, on the last three teams, Toro Rosso. Now, again, mentioned a bit about Sainz. I don't see him going back to Toro Rosso. I am sure I read something in his loan agreement with Renault that he could only be recalled to go to Red Bull. So I don't see him going back to Toro Rosso, and obviously I do see him going to McLaren. Now, as I say, Gasly's going to go, in my opinion, to Red Bull, and that could be the biggest reprieve ever for Brendan Hartley. The Kiwi struggled this year. He's had some bad luck as well. He's overdrove the car at times too. I think if Gasly goes, which I expect, that is going to see Hartley kept on. Now, the reason is, as I said earlier, Red Bull don't have the same pool of drivers they once had. There's been talk of Dan Tinkham, who's in F3 right now. They really want to get him up, the youngster. I think he's only like 16 or 17 for crying out loud. But he's got no points that would count to getting him a super licence. The only way he'll get that is if he wins the Formula 3 European Championship this year. He's currently 4th with a few rounds to go. So it's not likely that's going to be the case. Those two circumstances is going to save Hartley's job, I think. But who then goes alongside him if there's no one from Red Bull to come up that's going to be good enough? Well, this brings me back to Lando Norris. Now, you might be thinking, McLaren driver at Toro Rosso, they spoke about it earlier in the year. There's a rumour that Toro Rosso had approached McLaren about Norris, and I think they will get him into the seat. I think McLaren and Toro Rosso will come up with an agreement to put Norris in the second seat alongside Hartley, and here's the reason why. McLaren have signed, I use that word loosely at the moment, James Key to be a technical director at McLaren. James Key's currently at Toro Rosso. Toro Rosso not too happy at the way things went about, or trying to put him on a long-term gardening leave to stop him from leaving and going to McLaren straight away. So I think Norris is going to become a chess piece here, where they'll say, okay, we'll give you this driver that you want to have, and in return you allow Key to join us sooner. And I think that's what's going to happen. It's going to be backstage, behind the scenes politics. And we're going to see Brendan Hartley kept on with Lando Norris moved up from Formula 2 into the Toro Rosso seat on a 1 or 2 year loan agreement with McLaren. He'll remain a McLaren driver, but go off and drive for Toro Rosso, meaning he gets experience in F1, but he still has the links back to his parent team that has been around for his whole career. So I see that one happening, to be honest with you. On to Sauber Alfa Romeo, the second Ferrari B team, C team, whatever you want to call them. Now, this first off, it revolves what they do with Leclerc. Now, I think he will stay at Sauber. The only way I see him leaving Sauber is to go to Haas in place of Grosjean. And for me, Grosjean, as much as he's had a poor season, as I said earlier, needs to have a terrible next couple of races for that to happen. So I see Leclerc staying. However, I don't think Marcus Ericsson is as safe as people think. He has been over previous seasons, again due to the sponsorship money he can bring in. But now with the Alfa Romeo back in, they've got more money coming in that way. They're getting exposure, with more exposure and points for Leclerc as well. Ferrari's putting an additional back in with them, given the upgraded engine and all the rest of it. I'm not too sure if Leclerc's got a comfy seat there. Now, there was rumour if Leclerc went, Raikkonen would go back to Sauber, but I don't see Raikkonen at 39 going for, if he leaves Ferrari, he's retiring. It's as simple as that. And obviously Giovinazzi could even move into the seat as well, but again, I don't think they'll want to go with two relatively inexperienced drivers, but it's proven wrong in history. It can go completely tits up. I think Ericsson will hold on to that seat, but there is another possibility, and that is Stoffel van Dorn. Now, if McLaren don't hold on to him, he could go to Sauber. Method in my madness here. Sauber's chief executive, basically guy, team boss, I can't remember his name off the top of my head, but he's admitted that he is a fan of the Belgian driver, and he could offer a reprieve to him and thus to McLaren, allowing them to loan him out as well to stay on the grid. So I think Leclerc will stay. I think it'll be Ericsson, but I'm not too sure. It all revolves around a couple of things, but I'm going to stick my neck out and say they'll remain not unchanged with Charles Leclerc and Marcus Ericsson at least for 2019. But there's so many variables that can go on here, and with Force India. The Force India seats are the deciding factor in all these other seats. I'm telling you that now. And obviously with that, that brings us on finally to Williams. Now, when I wrote this originally, expecting the administration of Force India to go on for a while, I put down Lance Stroll would stay at Williams. But I don't see that happening now. And I don't see them keeping Sergei Sirotkin either, to be honest. The Russian's done well, even though he's not had the chance to prove it and he's the only driver with no points. But that Williams this season has been an absolute bloody dog of a car. It has been horrible. You can see it. I hate even saying it because I like the Williams team, but it has been terrible. Now, Stroll goes, that leaves money to come in. They're going to be losing Martini sponsorship as well. So, this is where we then come back to Sergio Perez. Now, he's another one that could go into the Sauber seat, but I think Williams would be more inclined to take the Mexican on because of that 12 plus millions personal sponsorship he brings with him. He is obviously backed by probably the richest man in the world, I think, Mexican businessman, billionaire Carlos Slim as well. So I can actually see Perez in that seat. And then alongside him, I think, will be the aforementioned George Russell. As much as Sirotkin's not really done anything wrong because of the car, I don't think they'll keep him. There's been rumours of an increased technical partnership between Mercedes and Williams, which may even lead to Mercedes giving them access to the gearbox as well, whereas before it was just the engine components. There may even be the link to giving them gearbox. So with that, they may want to then put one of their young drivers into the team as well. And I think that would be the perfect opportunity to get George Russell into the side. Now, many people at this point will be shouting, Andy, what about Robert Kubica? I'd love to see Kubica back. I really, really would. But he's now in his mid-30s. He'll be looking for a pay as well. And it's one of those ones I just don't see that one happening. So I see it being George Russell and Sergio Perez in at the Williams team for 2019. So Hamilton and Bottas, Raikkonen and Vettel, Verstappen and Gasly at Red Bull. We obviously know Hülkenberg and Ricciardo. Grosjean and Magnussen staying at Haas. I see it being Lance Stroll and Esteban Ocon at Force India. Spanish Armada at McLaren with Sainz and Alonso. Brendan Hartley getting a reprieve at Toro Rosso alongside Lando Norris. Leclerc and Ericsson staying at Sauber. And George Russell and Sergio Perez at Williams are my predictions at this point. But this is one of the most volatile driver markets that I can remember for many, many a year. And one change in any of that is going to start a domino effect and everything else. It could blow any prediction from me or anyone else totally out of the water in a hurry. But that's my thoughts at this point. Tell me what you think below in the comments. Hit like, hit subscribe. I'll come back to this at a later date once we've got the full lineup and we'll see just how right or wrong I have been. But that's it for me for today. My name's Andy. I will be back in a couple of weeks' time to review the Belgium Grand Prix on the weekend of the 24th to the 26th of August. But thank you very much for now. Until the next video, I'll see you again soon. Ta-da.